democracy is really just a proof of stake shitcoin. So I believe now, we're really in a position to strike, fast and hard with freedom and sovereignty for the entire world to where we don't have to deal with these tyrants ever again. And some people don't understand, what that means to the individual, but they have to actually stand up. They have to actually start to use the power. They have to wield the unlimited watts that Bitcoin gives a sovereign individual with self-custody to wage a soft war against tyrants that want to just steal from you, right? Awakening these people to this entire new world where they can actually hold and store their wealth without having to trust any other human is really empowering.
Welcome to Your Bitcoin Story podcast with your host, Gigi. Today, we're thrilled to welcome back a special guest, GMONEY. GMONEY is the host of Rug Pull Radio and a proud member of the O-Plan Bitcoin Group, where his mission is to empower individuals with the knowledge, tools, and technology to safely and securely store their Bitcoin. Having gone down the Bitcoin rabbit hole back in 2016, GMONEY has spent years mentoring people on all things Bitcoin and self-custody. Whether you're just starting out or looking to deepen your understanding of Bitcoin, GMONEY's insights are sure to inspire and inform. Let's dive into today's conversation. GMONEY, what a pleasure it is to have you back on the show, sir.
My brother from another mother. It's good to see you. And funny enough, we have the same initials. I don't know if I talked about that last time, so it's kind of a funny coincidence. 7, love the sevens. I like the numerology stuff. But no, it's good to be back, man. And I'm glad to see you're doing well and your pod is kicking ass. So it's good to be back, man.
Thanks, man. It's a pleasure. Yeah, thank you for the kind words. We've been steadily putting in that proof of work weekly, releasing it. For those listeners that don't know, GMONEY was one of the first big guests to be on the show. You were actually episode 4 of what was previously known as What is Your Bitcoin Story podcast. So if you want to hear the story of how GMONEY got rug pulled for some whiskey back in the day, then definitely go check out episode 4.
Yeah, I forgot. How did you find me again to get on the pod? I forgot.
I was in your Telegram group, so I was following that for a while. And then,
Nice.
and then I decided, you know what, time to reach out, time to get some big guests on. And there we had it.
Yeah, the Telegram group is fun. That's kind of where all the digs and all the research has gone on for the last it'll be almost 4 years now.
Wow.
We've been doing those digs on everything, kind of how white hat military operators were perhaps behind, the creation of this wonderful gift that was given to humanity. And yeah, it's quite a journey we've been on so far. And the last year has just been absolutely like crazy in what's been happening.
Of course. So that's why I invited you back on the show, because, as I said right before we started shooting, it's a different world out there, and so much has happened since we recorded the episode back, I believe it was early August of 2023. And here we are closing in on 2024. Well, this episode will be going out in early 2025. And you've grown so much. There's been so many things happening. I actually really enjoyed your recent episode on Robert Breedlove's episode. You're blowing his mind with all the 3 5s and 7s. I could just hear it. And it was amazing. And after listening to that episode, I was like, that's it. We need to get back GMONEY on the show and grill into some things. So
but just a correction, it was 369s or 315. So got to make sure the numbers are correct or it messes with my OCD, right?
No, you're right. But we need to get the facts right? So you're right. It is the 369s. So what have you been up to, GMONEY, in this year of 2024? How's it been for you?
Yeah, I don't remember how far we got into like some of my Trump, foretelling of he was being a Bitcoiner and a Bitcoin maxi, but like Trump is all in now. Like, I've been calling this for a long time. Like it seems like years now, where I kind of told everybody Trump is a underground Bitcoin maxi. And then all of a sudden May, it was just a couple meetings with the Bitcoin miners. Mm-hmm. And, he just totally skipped the Sailor series on What is Money and went to fully like soft war, Jason Lowery, strategic Bitcoin stockpile, not reserve, like ammunition, weaponized stockpile. And so I don't think that's a coincidence. Look, Trump likes to say, his kids are, really into it and this and that. Like, we're not that stupid. Trump created Space Force for a specific reason. Trump made Elon the largest DoD contractor for a reason. And I believe Tesla is a big part of this kind of slow roll military technology that's being unleashed to the world, whether it's rockets, whether it's electric cars, whether it's Starlink, Neuralink, robots, like you name it. Humanity has been suppressed through the fiat monetary system because they've had ways to not only naked short these different companies that have had new technology that would, in essence, devalue what they've been controlling us with. But, a lot of the technology didn't really have a reason to come about unless we had a sound money standard that could end corruption, because these technologies could only be, could also be used for negative things. And so I believe now, we're really in a position to strike, fast and hard with freedom and sovereignty for the entire world, to where we don't have to deal with these tyrants ever again. So it's an amazing route that we've been on the last year. It's been crazy.
Yeah, and talking about Trump going back onto the White House, we're I think just under 40 days, or right on the dot 40 days away from Trump going back into the White House. And I think straight from the get-go, the Bitcoin Strategic Reserve will go into full swing. And even prior to that materializing, I'm sure you're seeing like every other day, there's countries all over the world that are talking about it. Most recent one with Russia, which is where I'm currently based. They were discussing it, that they passed it in their parliament. To be honest, I've been saying for a long time, I think Russia's been mining their own Bitcoin for a long. They're not stupid, and being axed away from the SWIFT system, they had to have some other way and some plan B. No pun intended. Now, I mean, now in Europe, there's so many countries. The Polish up and coming president who's in the race, he's been talking about it. My native country of Slovenia has been talking about it. I mean, like, as I said, every day you're coming up and there's more and more and more countries. And I think once it's actually enacted in January, wow, it's going to be an avalanche. What do you think, GMONEY?
Well, look, I mean, he is signaling, he is telling everybody what he is going to do way ahead of time, which means he is trying to instill FOMO in all these different countries. He's trying to tell you, you better start buying Bitcoin now before I get into office, because that is what I'm going to do. And so if this was really like some secret plan, like, he's not being secretive about it. He's being very open and honest. And he's basically telling the entire world, in addition to plebs, right? Front run me, please.
Yeah.
Please front run me, because if you don't, you've already had 15 years and we're not slowing down for you anymore. This is your last chance to hop on this thing. And if not, you're just eventually going to, be depressed for not doing, what I told you I was going to do. But I also think there's a good chance that maybe Trump doesn't get actually sworn in, right?
Okay.
Remember, we live in a proof of stake democratic society, which democracy is really just a proof of stake shitcoin. And so if we think about Bitcoin actually ending the entire apparatus of political structures that are proof of stake, right? We have to think it has to be totally exposed. And that is, through our institutional, tyranny that is there. And so, in America, we have a system to where the electors, have to still vote to make sure Trump is president, which happens, I think the deadline is actually December 17th. And then it's not until January 6th when those electors actually get counted and approved, right? So there's still a couple steps in the rank and file democracy system where Trump actually has to still get into power, and so we'll see what happens. But look, we're $36 trillion in debt. Wall Street is a house of cards. We have naked shorts out there that still haven't been closed from GameStop and some other, interesting players. And so I don't know what's going to happen. I just think that everything seems a little bit too calm and everything was just a little bit too easy. And so I don't know. We'll see what happens.
Well, as the saying goes, the calm before the storm. I think, maybe it's not too bad that it went a bit easy. Well, if anything, the man nearly lost his life, right? I mean, it wasn't all too quiet. But yeah, we'll see now. I had no idea what you said, what you mentioned, GMONEY, with with the electors electing the next president, and essentially, giving their blessing to sworn him in. I had no idea. I thought it was a done deal, but looks like the politics game goes much deeper than us plebs see at the ground level.
Yeah, it's just kind of wild to see, how that's going to unravel. But I think we all did need like a breather. We needed we needed a win. We needed to, I think, calm the populace down a bit because everybody was very on edge, to that degree. And so,
Yeah.
I think the win was definitely needed from a moral standpoint, a kind of morality standpoint of like, hey, you guys are on the right track, but also like there might be some rug pulls in there on both sides. So, we'll see what happens.
Yeah, no, for sure. So leaving now kind of politics a little bit to the side, and kind of putting a little bit more focus on the average Joe and people entering the space. I'm sure over the last year since we last spoke, there's been like an avalanche of new people, what I like to call pre-coiners. Nobody's a no-coiner because someone's going to get the coin at some point in their life. So the pre-coiners have been flooding in. And since I mentioned in the intro, you also do mentoring through the Open Plan Bitcoin group. How have you kind of noticed the interest on, people taking their coins into self-custody and learning more about it and setting up, their nodes, miners, or whatever the interest is? How has that been in the last 12 months?
So it's been pretty steady and it's been pretty exciting because I kind of tell people, look, I'm here to offer you a bridge out of the matrix, right? Because so many people are still confused on what that means and what sovereignty means and what, protecting your own energy means and what counterparty risk means. And so, awakening these people to this entire new world where they can actually hold and store their wealth without having to trust any other human is really empowering. And so it's kind of fun to watch the light bulbs go off in people's heads like, oh wow, like I don't need to trust people anymore on some of this stuff, right? Like I can actually do this myself and I don't need to hand over my power to another human to have them protect that for me, right? And so the undomestication process is kind of, it's unique and it's wild, but it's also fun to see people's eyes kind of light up and like, oh my gosh, like my money doubled in just a short amount of time, and they're not used to that sort of thing because they've been living in this bondage. They've been living in this slavery to where they don't know what abundance is. They don't know what true freedom and sovereignty is. And so when that's kind of sent to them, it almost seems like it's too good to be true in a sense. But look, we're dealing with a populace that has been trusting without thought for a long period of time. They've been trusting without question, all these different things. And so, yeah, I mean, but it's still slow, right? Like it's still slow to really seep in. Even now with Trump over and over and over again talking about it, some people are still hesitant.
Some people are still sleeping, eh?
They're still sleeping. And that's why I think Michael Saylor and MicroStrategy is so important to a lot of this plan as well, by offering kind of, equities and bonds and things to the normal populace to at least get a piece of it, right? At least get some sort of on-ramp to Bitcoin, and Saylor being this new kind of, oil tycoon where he's refining the pure sovereign Bitcoin into smaller pieces for people to actually get a hold of, I think is absolutely brilliant. I think Saylor is absolutely 100% part of this. And so it's just fun to watch because Saylor is taken a very military-like posture and he is not backing down, right? Like
he's not bending the knee.
You're right. He was kind of like, oh, we're buying it for our treasury reserve as, now he's like, actually the smartest thing to do would be for the United States to sell their gold and dump it on the market and then pick up 25% of the new global, like that is full on game theory FOMO to the max. And it's not only that, but it's backed up by years, right? It's not, he just didn't do this. It's backed up by years and years of him stacking and accruing this entire ecosystem where he can now offer these bonds to people to give them exposure to Bitcoin because they can't buy Bitcoin directly. But he's injected our entire financial system. He is basically hedging a bet. He's kind of like the credit default swap on the entire bond market. And there's nothing stops us at this point because of the finite supply of Bitcoin and the transparency of it. You can't really, coincide any other technology that would have ever been able to do that. Gold could have never been able to do that. None of that. And so it's just going to grow from here. And it's too late for them to stop it at this point. So it's pretty wild to see.
And it's crazy, like every week there's a new buy coming in, and we're not talking about like a few Bitcoin, but we're talking like tens of thousands. They're just like push 50, 55,000, 23,000, 65,000. And it's like, it just keeps going. And I guess he will be doing it for a long time to come. People think, they're going to stop at some point, but I think his, game plan, it doesn't really have an end point. It just keeps going and going because the more money gets printed, the more money, gets put out, and he's just going to be scooping out more sats. And it's phenomenal in like such a short period of time how MicroStrategy and Michael Saylor are basically holding over 2% of the total supply of all the Bitcoins that will ever exist in the world. And I think there's no chance any private or public company will catch up at this point. He's too far ahead.
Yeah, and I think, Bitcoiners get very compartmentalized. They get compartmentalized with, oh, we don't want Wall Street to have tokens. We don't want Michael Saylor to own that much. We don't like, and they don't understand the overall, I think, plan of what this actually means. You've got the Roger Verge out there still talking about how it was hijacked when he himself was trying to do the hijacking. You've got Bitcoin maxis that are like, we should have never let Wall Street in. They don't think Michael Saylor is a good, like, there's just so many emotions out there. There's a lot of soy in the diets of, I think, Bitcoiners that are domesticated, right? There's a lot of domesticated, pussified Bitcoiners who are still paying taxes to pedophiles. And so at the end of this, right, like the whole goal of this is to end taxation forever for everybody. And some people don't understand, what that means to the individual, but they have to actually stand up. They have to actually start to use the power. They have to wield the unlimited watts that Bitcoin gives a sovereign individual with self-custody to wage a soft war against tyrants that want to just steal from you, right? They're purely there to steal from you, to not only bomb other countries and produce, poisonous vaccines, but also to indoctrinate your children. And so all that taxation and money goes to things that are probably not in your best interest. And it's much, much bigger, deeper. It's not about just hedging inflation, bro, right? This is a great awakening. This is a freedom sovereignty movement to where governments are reduced to service providers. And at the end of the day, we get free energy and we get a peaceful, abundant, world to where even if we don't like get along with people in China or Russia or wherever it is, we're involuntary cooperating on producing the next block and adding more energy and security to the system. And if you think about that, you think about all the energy and cost and time it goes into trying to blow each other up. Well, guess what? We can now put time and energy into our own economies and to also add security to the Bitcoin network. And it's actually within your best interest for your neighbor, even though you don't like them. It's in your best interest for their economy to do well. Because guess what? If their economy does well and they've added productivity, your Bitcoin number goes up. You doing nothing in your home country literally provides additional value to that Bitcoin. And it's just a completely new way of thinking of things. And so I think there's still too many doomers out there. There's still too many black pillars in the Bitcoin community that are worried about certain things when the future is actually unbelievable.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. It's hard to wrap your head around a concept where we all win. In this legacy markets, there is no everybody wins formula. It's always in markets, somebody wins, somebody loses. You sell high, someone buys it low, or vice versa. And with Bitcoin, that's why I think it's so hard for people to wrap their head around, thinking that, their quote unquote enemy is stacking sats, like, oh, that's terrible. But no, actually, they're all contributing for the good. And it basically gives us a universal, I don't know, language or communication of data and money transfer, which has never existed in the world. And then you get those dooms conspiracy guys, which are like, no, well, Bitcoin's then going to be one world government. And, we don't want that to happen. But it's like, guys, Bitcoin's much bigger than creating a one world government, and if anything, it's de-governmentizing people that really want to be sovereign and really want to be free. And I don't think there's ever been a time in our human history where, you can truly have your full freedom to be a true nomad, live wherever you want, do whatever you want, not depend on anyone, not be any slave in any form or shape to anyone. And I mean, it's beautiful. And the fact that it's unconfiscatable, there is no, certain party or government or institution or anyone come in and just confiscating it from you, may that be property, gold, or whatever other physical asset, as long as you have those seed words, stored in a safe location somewhere, hopefully far away from where you are, they can't touch you. And as Knut mentions this a lot, It's where if you kind of kidnap someone and put a gun to their head, you're not going to get anywhere. Even if you shoot them, there's no outcome out of it. It's much more logical for you to communicate, negotiate, and find a way to exchange value to cooperate. So I truly think Bitcoin is bringing in this peaceful renaissance, which we were long overdue with all these ridiculous wars and all this hatred and racism and everything that's been happening for the last 100, 200, God, 1,000 years. That now finally we kind of have this new element, which is kind of element zero, just nullifying everything.
Yeah, look, and so that's why I think, software is such an important piece of a lot of this, because a lot of Bitcoiners just kind of, glanced over that beautiful thesis by Major Jason Lowry. And
Yep.
It's probably the most important piece of work since the Satoshi white paper that has been put in print form. Okay. And so it's really, we were given this weapon, but we weren't really given an instruction manual, right? We were kind of given this peer-to-peer cash, right? That was sovereign and no counterparties and that sort of a thing. But like, we didn't really even understand it ourselves, and I believe it was the perfect camouflage for what Bitcoin really was, which really was energy-backed authority and power back to the people, right? Imagine giving humans unlimited access to digital arms, digital weapons, that are non-kinetic, right? We don't hurt anybody by wielding these weapons, but we're able to use that energy and that and those watts to actually protect sovereignty, protect individuality, protect culture, right? Everything goes into play when you're talking about that. And really, like, the end of the day, you have the option to tell people no. Like, guess what? I'm not down for that, and I'm no longer going to support this. And so what are you going to do, bro? You going to arrest everybody? So it's like a DDoS attack on their enforcement, right? On their enforcement apparatus, to where it's too expensive. They don't have the manpower. And then at the end of the day, like, their system gets debased, right? Because if they don't have access to an infinite energy printer, then they don't have the apparatus of bureaucracy to go after everybody. Like, everything leads towards draining the swamp, as the swamp actually gets drained by itself. Trump doesn't have to come in there and fire 5 million people that work at the, at the federal government. He can just say, you guys don't have a money printer anymore. Guess what, bureaucrats? You need to learn to code. Okay. You need to find something that you can provide value for. But if not, guess what? We're going to have such abundance that you can still eat for free and have maybe an electric car or something and a nice place to live. But you're no longer going to be part of this, culture of tyranny, or be used in that way.
No, for sure. And it's crazy, as I mentioned to you off the record. People dismiss the software book, which was, I totally agree with you, probably the second most important writing that we have after the white paper. And I was lucky enough; it's right there on my bookshelf. As soon as the copies came out on Amazon, I snapped it right away. I wish I would have gotten more just to give as priceless sentimental gifts to my close ones who have orange pilled over the years. But luckily, and everybody listening to this episode thinking, what is GMONEY and Gigi talking about this software? You can get your copy of it of digital form by going to the Oplan Bitcoin group, which you tweeted about just last night, as I mentioned, where you mentioned that Bitcoin was never meant to be a peer-to-peer cash. Satoshi did a great job of hiding the true intentions as energy-backed weaponized authority, which you just mentioned. And I think I can fully relate to that, because after you read that book, you realize, wow, this is much more than just, electronic digital money. Like we're talking about here, not just individuals, but nation states, truly weaponizing their authority and getting a stance on it. And it's fascinating how far we've already come in less than 16 years, where January, where by the time this episode goes live, Bitcoin is going to be 16 years old. It's insane, right? It hasn't been like 60 years or 100 or 500 years. Like in a matter of just under 16 years, we've come so far. Imagine the next 10, 15, 20 years. Wow. Like when people say, oh, I'm too late, looking at the price, maybe 100 or 120,000, whatever it's going to be next month. It's irrelevant, like it's about you starting to stack as soon as you can and learning more about this phenomenal technology that's changing the world, if you like it or not. And you better understand it sooner so that you take, full advantage and start becoming a self-sovereign individual, which is highly needed, because there's so many over regulations and so much, once again, going back to one of my favorite Bitcoiners with Knut, and his latest book, The Clown World, like we truly live in a clown world. it's just insane out there. And I don't know what I would be doing without Bitcoin. It would be a pretty miserable, depressive place to be living. And I think, a lot of people are seeking this way out, and it's right there in front of them.
Yeah, you can go download Jason Lowry's thesis software at 1776.love.love, right? Because this is a peaceful, loving revolution. Also on there, which is very important for people to understand, is the Declaration of Independence in Cyberspace by John Perry Barlow. So you put those two documents together along with the Satoshi white paper, and what you get is this magical three-pronged attack on the status quo. And yeah, people aren't thinking big enough, right? They're not thinking big enough on what this actually is. And so, we need Bitcoin to scale because we do not have transactions. That's like, it's all very normie-ish speak. And they're not able to leave their, their little echo chambers. And actually, they're not able to hum themselves in like, hey, maybe I was wrong about that, right? To where I think some of us can be like, you know what? I was actually wrong. And this gives me a new perspective. And wow. So if you're not able to like disregard what you like held on to in the past and you're not able to move forward, like you'll get caught up and you get stuck in these little circle loops to where you're not able to actually ascend into what really is happening. And that's what I think happens. It happens to me from time to time, right? I get stuck somewhere in these corners. And another big one too is tokenization, right? Everyone's like, oh no, we're going to talk about tokenization. It's a scam, right? Guess who just came out big for tokenization, right? Michael Saylor in the Cantor Fitzpatrick episode to where our talk where he talked about how, you should be able to hold a tokenized equity on your phone, just like you hold Bitcoin, right?
Yeah.
And the reason for that is because of the securities lending corruption that happens in Wall Street. And Wall Street is over $115 trillion of, corruption, theft, and, they have a double spend problem, right? They have a double spend problem of, it's called equities lending, to where 75% of the revenue that comes from these brokers is from naked short selling equities and lending those equities, rehypothecating them 10, 20 times over, right? And so imagine like most of like Goldman Sachs and most of, JP Morgan, most of their revenue comes, 75% of it comes from just lending shares. There's no value there, right? And not only that, but they're able to do things to where they manipulate companies and there's no transparency. And so Michael comes at it from a different angle because he talks about how, the capital markets are only accessible to 0.06%, 6% of companies on earth, right? Because it takes 4 years and $4 million and 40 lawyers to actually become a public company, where a tokenized equity can be done for less than $40 and less than, a day, right? You can actually tokenize your program, your company. You can have all the shares be totally transparent on the Bitcoin blockchain. That's why I'm always covered in these frogs, because I believe counterparty is that second layer ecosystem. But look, Bitcoin was never going to scale worldwide for peer-to-peer cash, right? But tokenization, I truly believe, is how you can scale Bitcoin to over 8 billion people with always having our North Star, always having the main chain to rely on. Counterparties is layer 2 that, resides on op return, just like Bitcoin Lightning. Lightning, obviously, another great invention that allows Bitcoin to scale. And so I think people need to really start changing their minds a little bit about what tokenization means and what that really provides. It provides full transparency to the equity markets, to the bond markets, to where we don't have to trust me, bro, on a lot of these things, because no one actually owns their stocks or their equities, right?
Of course.
And I think MicroStrategy is going to be the first to really kind of kick that off. And so we'll be following that closely on what they plan to do.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with, the concept of tokenization. People straight away, they start thinking of, all the alternative coins that are out there, but that's not what we mean here. We're talking about, doing multi-layers on top of Bitcoin, as you said, always having the base chain as the main anchor, the North Star. But, another phenomena that we're seeing now, especially in the last 12 months since we recorded, is, the growth of eCash, and specifically, Cashew and Fedimint, like how many, new and privacy focused, layers are being built and can be used today. And there's so much innovation happening, whereas people are still crying about, Bitcoin is slow and, it doesn't scale anywhere and there's no privacy and there's whatever it is, you can find your grasp in it. And once again, going back to the time frame, right? Like it's 16 years. Once again, we're not a technology that's been around for 60 years and hasn't done any innovation in the last decade. Like things are unraveling at lightning speed. So what's your take on the growth of eCash and all these new layers that are pumping up?
Yeah, look, I think the stable coins are going to be still used, right? I think Bitcoin is still going to be store of value, right? But people aren't going to want to transact daily in Bitcoin, right? Bitcoin is going to be your weaponized sovereignty. It's going to be energy-backed authority. It's something much more special than even a store of value that can't be put into words. And so people aren't going to want to spend that willy-nilly on a cup of coffee, right?
Yeah.
I'd rather spend like something like a Dogecoin or a Tether or something else to where I can spend, I can have cheaper fees, and I can instantly transact to where my main base, savings technology is stored and not really used in that sense, unless it's like a major purchase, like maybe a house or something, to where people want to really kind of trade some of that for something else. But I'm all for it because I think stable coins are an essential part of that. We're seeing Jack Mallers now integrate Tether into Strike because people want the offboarding to pay in those currencies. And Tether's been a good thing. It's given people access to dollars all across the world that otherwise wouldn't have access to dollars because their currencies were failing. So it gave them some stability in an unstable world, especially with other foreign governments that are even more corrupt, right, than the United States. And so it saved a lot of them from being able to store in a currency to where they could actually have some predictability and not lose all their savings overnight. So I think the stable coins are going to be huge. And I think once they get integrated into some of these protocols, like maybe Counterparty or other ones, to where we'll have a fully functioning DeFi market, right? And what did Trump say to Farouk when he said, how did you first get into crypto, right? He talked about NFTs, and NFTs are just smart contracts, immutable smart contracts. And that is really, I think, the kind of the Trojan horse. Like Bitcoin's kind of like the Trojan horse for tokenization, because tokenization, it goes to your identification. It goes to the equity markets. It goes to land title. Imagine if you owned your own title, right, to your land in a digital way. Not only would they not be able to tax it, right, but they wouldn't be able to confiscate you, and they wouldn't be able to have coercion against forcing you to give up your property. And so it ends taxation even for property taxes and everything else, to where we become a full voluntary society. If you want protection, this level of service, blah, 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 you're going to have to pay for it, fine. But you're going to be actually able to see exactly what you're getting for that, right? The tokenization. Hey, government, you want to go bomb Ukraine? You want to go bomb these different countries? Guess what? You get to start a GoFundMe, bro. You get to start a smart contract or something in there. And if people sign into it, you guys can go ahead and do that. But guess what? I guarantee you, once you start forcing people to pay for some of these things that nobody's going to pay for, it's always been fake and gay. It's always been tyrants, CIA, bankers, who have not only provided false flags, but have given other people a reason to hate us because we wanted something from them. We wanted to somehow manipulate them, and we do that through the financial system.
Quick interruption, folks, because your seed phrase deserves better than a napkin in your sock drawer. We've partnered up with Stampseed, the legends of professional-grade metal stamping tools. Their patented tools are made from solid titanium, the indestructible kind. You hammer your seed phrase letter by letter, so it's literally etched in stone. Well, titanium, but you get the idea. No loose pieces, no oops, my letter shifted around, and 0 points of failure. Perfect for wallets, multi-sig setups, or if you're planning to pass your Bitcoin empire to your kids. Mount it to a wall, stash it under a desk, or hide it like a treasure map. Use code BTCstory for a 15% off site-wide discount, because your seed phrase shouldn't be left to chance. Visit stampseed.com and order your personal stamping kit today. And now, let's get back to the episode. Yeah, and do you think, GMONEY, that these corrupt institutions and kind of the guys that have been playing the flute for so long, the JP Morgans and everybody else, do they realize what Bitcoin's here to do? Or you think they're just seeing it as another speculative asset, came out of nowhere, people are going crazy about it, and we'll start offering it to our clients, to get some fees? Or do you think they're actually scared and they're thinking of how they can suppress it, even though I don't think they can? But what do you think their thoughts are? Do you think they realize they're in a race that they're losing no matter what, or they're sleepers in that sense?
Well, I think they're finally starting to realize it when they're realizing what Saylor's doing. That's why you see all the clowns talking about, selling gold is crazy and stupid, and how Michael Saylor is just some pump and dumper. They're actually terrified right now because they realize that the belief system in the monetary system is purely just based on our beliefs, and that a new belief system can evolve rather quickly. And that when no longer believes the old way of doing things, that transition happens very quickly towards the end, right? It's may taken us 16 years to get to where we're at now, but now you see sheer panic on some of the people in Wall Street, right? Oh, don't buy, it's the top. It's way too high. It's toppy. Don't listen to Michael Saylor talking about it's $1 million. Like those narratives are falling on their face, and they realize they're losing this battle. And so it's funny to watch the mainstream propaganda come out and talk about this stuff where, there was just a guy, I think he was former SEC chair or something. He was talking about how, we don't have, capital requirements we don't have any, different regulations. It's not regulated. It's like, go fuck yourself and your stupid regulations. We don't need that anymore. We rather trust in the code versus your corruptness. And so it's funny putting them all out on display, putting the clowns all out there to where they're starting to realize shit, but it's way too late at this point. And so if they don't get on board, they lose even quicker. And so they're forced to play the game, because if they don't get involved, their DNA and their wealth goes to zero. If they get involved, it helps eliminate them quicker in a sense of their corruption, right? They're no longer able to manipulate. And so both choices are shitty for them. But there's one less shittier option, which is, shit, I better just get involved. And then they're going to have to just capitulate. And then that's just, that's the beauty of it, because the people that don't get involved, they're just going to get really depressed. They're just going to be like those crazies, right? That are still wearing their masks and afraid of everything, because like, it can't be right. It can't. And they're sitting in a corner, like literally like in a mental institution, because they were giving so much actual like warning, but they were stuck in such a old degraded system that they couldn't get out of. And so it's kind of beautiful to see, because it exposes everybody that's supposed to be exposed. And then those that want to see the signal are on board, and hey, come on board, man. We're happy to have you.
Yeah, and just to add on that, what we've seen this week with the big kind of news that everybody was watching with is the Microsoft board gonna adopt Bitcoin on their treasury, and then the vote came out, and it was everybody shocked that it was less than 1%. I believe it was 0.55% of the board actually voted for it, which is pretty crazy. Like, I watched the 3-minute pitch from Saylor, which I thought was phenomenal, how he condensed so much alpha into such a short span. And I mean, if that doesn't do it for you, Microsoft board members, I don't know what does. And what's your take on that? That 99.5% of the board voted, nah, we'll pass on this. We kind of seen the performance of MicroStrategy, but this is not for us. We'll carry on doing what we always have.
I think it's great, because history is going to absolutely not be kind to these people, to where they passed up an amazing opportunity. And so it's going to just expose Microsoft more, right, for the corruption that they've been involved with Bill Gates and his vaccine research and all the different things he's done, shorting Tesla, right?
Yeah.
And so Bill Gates is not a good guy. And Microsoft is
probably a shocker.
Yeah, been involved in some things that are probably not so good for us. And so they're getting kind of the karmic energy that's coming back to them. And so, look, they're going to be having to buy Bitcoin at $1 million coin, if they're lucky enough to get it at that price. And so, again, this is a game theory natural selection process. And the old guard of tyranny is losing. And they're losing because they can't get over the fact they are not humbling themselves. They still think they're in control when they're not. And I just think history is going to be absolutely brutal to these people. And so I love being on kind of that right side of creating these legacies, to where these companies are just going to basically end up penniless, and basically, they're going to be like, they're not going to be able to exert any more power anymore, which is great. They don't deserve the power because they have abused it for so long.
Yeah, and I think another thing that will happen out of this is also, as we kind of transition into this, if I may call so, the golden age of Bitcoin and companies adopting it, this shift of consumerism, of working every year to release a new product, to add an extra little button or make it a half an inch a little bit thinner, is kind of going to die out, because it doesn't make sense, like it's much more better like they used to do products. I guess our grandparents remember when you bought a washing machine or a fridge, that thing lasted you for like 3 decades, not for like 3 summer seasons. And I think we are going to go back to that system where we're kind of making stuff of higher quality in smaller quantity and charging a higher price than doing, so much of crap that we don't need for a fraction of a price. Largely, we have that because of China currently is the big factory of the world, kind of even Apple, which charges you 1,000 bucks for your latest iPhone, gets it done in a Chinese, factory. And I think slowly, as Bitcoin adopts, like we'll see this shift, not just in consumerism, but also in manufacturing, which I think should be a super positive thing for the world, where, those doomers that are saying, Bitcoin mining is, destroying and burning our oceans. Actually, all this junk and crap that we're dumping into the oceans is killing much more wildlife and marine life than Bitcoin mining. So what's your take on that, GMONEY? Are you of the same thought on that?
Yeah, I think open source is going to become really big in the future. And, you won't have these companies that are protecting their IP with patents and stuff because, that just means that they're weak and they can't do it properly, right? Elon has released a lot of his technology open source, right? Battery technology, a lot of it. And he still kicks their ass. And so, we don't have to be hiding behind these legal structures, proof of stake, right? That are protecting, the 1% from essentially, and look, Microsoft's made shitty products for a long time, right? Why do you think, Linux is so important for a lot of different applications, right? And so open source and transparency is really kind of the only way forward, because it's going to be, because trust has been broken for so long. And I agree with you, monetizing energy is the smartest thing to do, because energy creates abundance. You can go anywhere and look at any chart and shows that the more energy a country produces, right, the longer and healthier those people are, because of all the energy for heating, lighting, whatever it may be. And so that energy resource is coming to each individual in a big, big way, whether it's, having a robot at home doing extra chores for you, right? Or a car that drives itself, or a car that's out there autonomously making money for you while you sit at home, do nothing, right? And so the productivity gains and abundance is going to be massive. And it does shift away from this commercialism of buying trinkets and instant gratification, to where now, right, a lot of us can sit back and go, wait a minute. I was hustling, busting my ass every day because I was worried about paying bills next month, that I could not even sit down and read a book and enjoy my time, to where I couldn't even think about the future. And now people can take the time to bring care and some forethought into what they want to accomplish and what they want to do, so that they can make better products, they can do better things. And so we won't be still stuck in this rat race of growth over, right, the human element. And so I think it's going to drastically change the corporate woke infrastructure, the politicized bullshit corporate. I just so detested by that entire ecosystem and what it stood for, because I was in it for so long. And I'm so glad to be out of it, that those people, I think, are going to have a hard time because of how bad that entire system has ran, from middle management to upper management. And Bitcoin's slowly going to change those people over time. But that's going to be fun to watch too, actually.
And yeah, a large proportion of these people are what some of us call as rent seekers, right? Like doing minimal, giving minimal value and taking the biggest chunk of rewards. And it's going to be interesting to see how these people adopt into this new world, which is actually based on proof of work. If you want to get paid for your service or your product, you got to put in the work. And suddenly it's like, oh my God, can't just be sitting on my 95th floor, pressing a few buttons on my fancy Microsoft Windows 11 computer and not really doing anything. It's going to be interesting. And I think, I fully agree with you on the fuss on the, free open source software. That is the way, and that's how it should have been from the get-go. But then in the early days of the cypherpunks, suddenly these big tech companies said, no, everything's going to be licensed. You're going to be buying these memberships. You're going to be, paying for all these services. But now, we're seeing this resurgence and this renaissance of open source projects, which I think all Bitcoiners happily support, and you have this opportunity to get supported by people that believe in the right thing that you're doing, instead of buying the flagship model of these tech companies. So it certainly is a very interesting time in these crossroads that we find ourselves in.
Yeah, and I think, a lot of this was not just by coincidence, right? Bitcoin was not just created in some random Japanese guy's basement, right? There was a greater plan to bring this technology to everybody and bring it in the most fair way possible. And I do believe the power structures that be involved probably Trump, involved probably Putin, involved probably Xi, involved probably Saudi Arabia, right? To where they could slow down the price appreciation of Bitcoin to at least a manageable degree, to where as many plebs as possible could get access to this technology, to slowly bring about a transition that was somewhat normal, somewhat peaceful, to where we can once and for all end these 1,000-year-old tyrants. And, we're in the coolest time to be alive, I think, ever, because we get to witness that firsthand. We get to be part of this revolution. And look, I think, Satoshi and the Q and the Great Awakening is all kind of involved together. And, that involves Tesla energy. That involves all the hidden secrets of Tesla. That involves, possibly MIT and John G. Trump, which is Trump's uncle, first getting access to those Tesla files, talking about energy currencies. All of it is not just coincidence. And so I think we need to look a little bit deeper and not get so compartmentalized into the fear and doom loops that we get caught up in sometimes.
No, 100%. And, you mentioned Tesla, which Nikola Tesla to me is one of the greatest inventors of our time. Well, not our time, but in human history. And, as he famously said, if you understand the meaning behind the numbers of 369, you have the answers to the universe. And for most part, even today, most people don't realize that. And with Bitcoin, there's so many similarities, and especially going with the Q, which most listeners that have no idea what, once again, we're talking about with the Q, you can definitely go over to Breedlove's episode where GMONEY takes you in a deep rabbit hole of the Q files. But it's fantastic, and we could spend hours talking about it. But just bringing it back to the 369, actually, what I also realized, that is it a coincidence the Genesis block was mined on the 3rd of January, and then it took 6 days for the second block to come out on the 9th of January, right? Like, you have your 369 from the get-go. And I don't believe that was a coincidence, this is just like the peak of the iceberg. If you grill down, there's so many, numbers that connected together, and this can't be a coincidence, like I truly, I don't believe in coincidences. Everything really happens for a reason. And whoever was the group that masterminded the white paper that was using the Satoshi Nakamoto synonym, this was a much bigger plan that was being built for I would say centuries. Something that as you said, some Japanese guy in his basement cooked up over the summer. It goes way back. And I think most of us, including ourselves right now, we still don't fully grasp what Bitcoin's here to do. We, of course, have a much better understanding and are much deeper down the rabbit hole. But I still think, this rabbit hole never ends. We're going to be discovering these things for the rest of our lives, and our future generations, great-grandchildren, great-great-grandchildren. Everybody's still going to be amazed at, how this is changing everything forever. So as I always tell people, don't sleep on this tech, get involved, start learning. If you don't believe a lot of the stuff that's being, said, or if, in matter of fact, if you don't believe a lot of the stuff that we're speaking right now with GMONEY, go out and research it yourself. That's the beauty of it. You don't have to believe us. We're not here to preach you our theories. We're just sharing our experiences and our findings. And, the more we spend time on it, the more fascinating it gets. And the less I want to be involved with the old system. It's kind of, as I was telling GMONEY, I've recently left my 9-to-5 rat race, and it's only been a matter of a few weeks, but I already feel like a bird that's like left this cage. There's none of this.
So cool.
De-stressing of clients and, being a little number in a corporation to be serving them and essentially wasting your most precious asset, which is your time. TikTok next block is not just the blocks, it's your own time in this world. And now, I'm kind of pinching myself. Why did I wait so long? And I want more people to really, exit the matrix fully and realize for themselves, enjoy every moment, dedicate time to things you really want to do. And if you're unsure what's your life path, man, just look inside, focus down, get rid of the noise, and the signs will come. And this is something what I love in this industry. Everybody's so inviting, everybody's so loving, everybody's up for helping out each other. And there's so much to build. This new world is literally, we are like these painters that are painting the base layer on the canvas, but this canvas has a lot more paint to go on it. So, I also believe it. What a time to be alive. And there's no time to be sitting and crying. Why is inflation coming in? Why is this war happening? I don't know, irrelevant. Whatever's happening is happening, but you focus on you and you're going to have a much happier life.
Absolutely. And I think people, when they start seeing the connection with Tesla with Bitcoin, it's pretty amazing. But Vortex math is part of Bitcoin code, right?
Hmm.
369 is embedded, the digital roots inside of the Bitcoin code, right? Like block halving is every 210,000, right? Blocks, right? So it's 210, which is a three. 420, which is a six, right? Then it goes to 630, which is a nine, 369. Like it's literally part of the code of 369. And when you think about that, you get into to the 315 in my Covfefe dig. If you haven't read Covfefe, I
Oh yeah.
break down where we can kind of open source, connect some of these dots to 1111. And what is 1111, right? It's a day that ended all wars, right? It was Armistice Day, Veterans Day. And there's a lot of power and magic in numbers that helps the collective consciousness bring about change. And so, look, I'm not a big numerology guy. I never was, but I just kept seeing these pattern recognitions. And so when you see the pattern recognition in Bitcoin, like it's undeniable. So it's a fun rabbit hole too, because if you're stuck, just doing the normal Bitcoin stuff, I encourage a lot of people to go research it and give feedback. And if you have things to add to it, please add to it, because I'm always looking for new insights into this. But look, Vortex math, 369 math, prime numbers, root numbers are all part of Bitcoin. And it's kind of like, mathematics is what, our world is kind of written in. And
Yeah.
so it's very complementary to our natural world, right? Everything is of natural law. Everything is of natural essence. Everything is connected to reality, right? No proof of stake. This is all proof of work. And so that all blends very nicely with humans and the way we interact with each other. And so at the end of the day, we've kind of biotechnically hacked into each of us this Bitcoin code, and it's part of us, and it's not going to stop. And yeah, I know, fully concur with a lot that you say. And so I'm glad that you're open to a lot of these ideas, because some people just immediately shut down and they're not ready for that kind of new age thinking. So it's good
Yeah.
to have people on our side.
No, for sure. And, on the aspect of code, like even our DNA is code, which most people don't realize, talking about the intertwining and codifying yourself, it really resembles. And you mentioned the Kofifi gig. Definitely in these show notes, instead of just having the usual X Noster links and all of that nonsense, we'll do like a resource bullet point, and we'll definitely lead people to, of course, the Jason Lowry PDF book, your Kofifi gig. And I highly encourage all of the listeners that want to kind of go deeper down the numerology path and connect the dots and see the symbolism everywhere around us. Definitely check out the show notes. We'll definitely make sure to include all of those in there, because GMONEY, I praise you. You've done a lot of work connecting those things, and it's something that doesn't get enough credit, and I would love to promote it as much as possible, because I found it fascinating. And I'm sure, I don't know of anyone that would have gone through all of that and said, it sounds like some crap. Like, it's such it sparks up a fire, and then it's down to you how much you want to like feed that fire with petrol. Like you can make that flame go real high, and there's so much alpha in there that, yeah, we'll definitely share it with the listeners.
No, I appreciate that. And I initially started out doing it, trying to disprove it. I'm like, there's no way this is going to continually like keep hitting on these things. And it kept doing it. And so I felt I had to release it to the world. And, I don't know why, I ended up coming up with it, but it's all open source, right? It's not like
Yeah.
I'm like a trust me bro thing. And that's what's great about it, is I don't have to like try to convince you. Like you can convince
Or
yourself
protect it.
based on the proofs. Yeah, like look at the proofs yourself. So I think it's just a really cool story, and it's a really cool rabbit hole, and it ends up being a major part of this. So.
For sure. So I guess to kind of wrap up, we've touched upon different aspects. I want to kind of wrap around to the human interactions and communities. Since we've last spoke, GMONEY, you've been to quite a few conferences, including the big one that happened this year in Nashville. How's that been? How's your experience been with essentially intermingling? Because at the end of the day, all of the Bitcoin stuff that we're doing is fun, but the funnest thing is going to conferences and intermingling and exchanging ideas and just being in this. I call it the timeless time. Whenever I go to a Bitcoin only conference, like it feels like there is no time. Like you're in this time vortex. It's just like you're there and you don't want that time to ever finish. How's it been for you? Tell us, was there been some interesting interactions, and what happened to you?
Yeah, no, I mean, I got to meet Michael Saylor finally in Nashville, and he actually came on my show and my pod, and we
Yeah.
discussed some interesting things, and I got to finally ask him, why his initial price for buying Bitcoin was $11,111.11. So that was really exciting. But no, look, like, I feel like I'm meeting with the original, revolutionaries that fought in 1776. Like we're all We've all been weaponized economic, power figures to where we can teach other people. And the more we get on board, we're fighting without borders. We're fighting without a flag. We're literally all united, just, decentralized to where we're taking down this 1,000-year-old beast like you talk about. So the energy is great. Bitcoiners are probably the greatest people on the planet because they're all transparent. They're not trying to hide anything. A lot of people are open book because they've realized that being part of your life, you don't have to hide things from people. You don't have to be this, protected media. How are people going to look at me? Like, just be real. Yeah, just be real, bro. And so it's good to be around real people versus the corporate world where everybody's trying to protect their, the way that people see them. Yeah. And they're political and it's just all bullshit. And so it's good to be out there with real people that are talking real things. And look, our frog army is growing and, liquidity follows cult. And we're the coolest cult on the planet right now, right? So like you want to be poor, like, have fun with your fiat and your gold, but like, the rest of us are having fun. We're freeing ourselves, like you said, one by one. And other people are going to start to realize like that, holy shit, these Bitcoin guys are just like kind of like living their lives and doing their own thing. And that's definitely something that, people strive to do.
Yeah. And, as I like to say, lead by example, not by words, because if you're just preaching to someone, oh, this is fantastic, this is so great, but then you're all stressed out and you're a miserable human being, and it's not too persuasive. But as you said, if people see you that you're happy, you have control of your time, which everybody would wish to have, and you're kind of doing what you want to do, it's logical and it's natural to be like, hey, I want to be like that guy, and what's that secret? Well, that secret is start stacking sats, right? And studying what we're building here and what's already been built. So I think, the answers are right in front of people's eyes. They just need to focus more on it. I think there's also other powers that are being projected on us, may that be through social media, normie TV, whatever, which is all about dumbing you down and keeping you, juiced up for the next whatever thing is trending. Sometimes you should just zoom out, close all that digital, BS out and just focus on yourself and ask yourself, what do I really want to be doing? Because once again, life is so short. It flies away before you know it. Before you know it, you're in that what they call traditional retirement age, and you're kind of thinking, what did I do in my life? And nobody wants to be that old grandpa regretting, why didn't I take those decisions and live to the full possibilities? And now you actually can. So I really do encourage everybody that's listening to the show and thinking, hey, like maybe I should take the leap of faith and leave the old world and join the brave, what I call freedom warriors, and focus on giving value back to others. May that be, it doesn't mean you need to do another podcast or whatever it is. If you do, go for it. We're all for sharing love. It's not a competition ground here, but there's so many things you can do, and Bitcoiners will show you so much appreciation that you've never seen in your old world, that it's a beautiful time to get involved. So if you aren't, you're definitely making a deadly decision. Don't be a Microsoft, open and see the real potential in joining the Bitcoiners.
Yeah, I know, 100%. You need to kind of forget everything that you've learned to kind of go to the other side. And sometimes that's hard for people. You get caught up in the political rugs or the media
100%.
rugs. And so, yeah, the best way is to just kind of go zen out, forget everything that you've learned your entire life, and try to find out your true calling, your true purpose.
Yeah, no, to round up, I think that's a nice, stringent to kind of focus on Buddhism and Buddha's teachings, right? I think I'm not a religious person, but from what I heard, like, Buddha's teachings are all about looking inside and finding the answer. It's not looking out and finding your priest, your whatever, your mentor or whoever it is to guide you. It's about you sitting down and focusing on the inside and really listening to your inner voice. What do I want to do? Unfortunately, most people are too busy running nonstop, chasing some dream. May that be the next big paycheck, promotion, that hot chick, or the hot red Corvette on their driveway. Instead of maybe you don't need none of that. Maybe all you need is a little cabin in the woods, and nobody touches you, and you are the happiest guy ever, and you don't need no flashy things. So we're all different, yet we're all the same. So choose what is right for you and live a free life. I guess anything else, GMONEY, you want to share with my listeners, or kind of to conclude your thoughts on the variety of things we focus this kind of episode when all over the place, but we just went full freestyle on it. Any last remarks you wanna share, GMONEY?
I love it. Yeah, no, you guys can catch me Thursday nights on Rumble. It's called Rug Pull Radio. We're part of Badlands Media. So Thursday nights, 10:30 p.m. Eastern. You can find me on X at GMoneyPepe. And then the Telegram group is Bullion Bitcoin BS, where a lot of us kind of hang out and talk a lot of shit. And it's fun. And so, no, I'm just happy to be a part of this. I'm honored to fight on the battlefield with you, brother, even though you're all the way across on the other side of the world. And look, we're winning. We're winning big time. And, if you want to get on the winning team, it's pretty easy, right? Get out of Loserville, right? Come onto the digital battlefield, become a digital soldier, and empower yourself, empower the individual. Start learning how to take your power back. And there's people here that can help you.
For sure. And there's no annual license to pay. It's all free open source tech. Thanks a lot, GMoney. It's been a pleasure. I look forward to having you back on the show, brother, in the future. Thank you for everything you're doing. And yeah, I'll include all the things in the show notes. Definitely, guys, tune in on Thursdays to listen to the Rug Pull Radio. I can vouch it's a very engaging topics and amazing guests that you have on, including Sailor a few months ago. And you really break down a lot of good points. So best of luck with that. And thanks again for taking the time to come back on the show.
Thanks, Gigi. Shade away, guys.
I hope you enjoyed this episode as much as I did recording it. I would really appreciate it if you could like, subscribe, and share this episode to help this podcast grow. Thanks for supporting the show, and until next time, stay safe and stack sats.